Hello, nerds for Yang.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds! So nerds!
Hello,
nerds!
Now with this campaign, bang, dang, it's and Drew, come roll with the Yang gang.
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
Hello, nerds.
Hello, nerds!
All right. This is a panel I've been looking forward to for a while. We are going to talk about Unity 2020, Darkhorse Duo, Biden 2020, the decision that a lot of us are thinking through for what to do in a world where Yang has officially suspended his campaign. Before we get into it, let's just go with some quick introductions as to who everybody is, and then we'll dig into the meat of it. But why don't we start with you, Cody? We'll go in the order of the hello nerds. Cody, tell us a little bit about yourself and say hello to the Nerds for Humanity Nation.
Great. Hello, Nerds for Humanity Nation. My name is Cody Hill. I am at CodyRH2020 on Twitter. But I work in big tech at one of the big firms everyone knows about. Probably not allowed to disclose that here. But I'm a big Andrew Yang fan, big fan of Humanity Forward and all the conversations that have been brought to light that we really need to be having in society. And this is my first live stream, but really happy to be on here chatting with everyone.
Welcome, Cody. Alex.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Tom. Nice to meet you, Fred, Cody. I'm a Bahamian American Yang fan. I flew to Iowa to support him with the Burlington Yang Gang. And professionally, I work as a consultant and entrepreneur in the Bahamas.
Thanks, Alex. Fred?
My name is Fred. I am the co-founder of Truckers for Yang. I have the giant Andrew Yang Truckers for Yang Freedom Dividend truck.
Right on. All right, so maybe I'll start with where my sort of just general head is at with this whole conversation, and then you all can share how you're thinking about it. So I saw this Darkhorse Duo conversation pick up obviously after the Rogan interview with Bret Weinstein, who we did invite to the show, but obviously he's a busy guy. And I thought, wow, that's super intriguing. But I thought, oh, that would have been a great conversation in, July of 2021 when we're talking about the next go round, or, July of 2018, because my view is like, wow, it's hard enough to get on the ballot, even if you're in one of the established parties, to spin up a new party with 120 days left seems like the longest of long shots. And I worry that it could take away energy from, electing Biden, which would be my preferred outcome if you asked me, do I prefer Biden or Trump? So that's where I'm coming from. But I know there's a lot of people who've thought more about this and have different perspectives. And so curious to hear where you guys are coming from.
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly, go for the same order. Or
yeah, sure. Let's do the same order so that we can all know. Okay. Go ahead, Cody.
Sure, yeah. So like many of all, I watch a lot of the same kind of podcasts in this area. I saw the Bret Weinstein idea on Joe Rogan and watched him explain it at various other outlets as well. And I guess for me, I am pro the idea. I think that we are very locked into this conversation of the inevitability of like these two parties. And unfortunately, I think that really limits the good outcomes that are possible. And I understand that it's not likely that this is going to happen. It's not likely that we'll be able to like get on the ballots and have everything work out perfectly and like create an entire new party. But I also don't think that that's really the point of this. I think that like the point of this is that we need to start bringing the idea that something different is possible outside of this gridlocked two-party system, getting that idea into more people's heads, because that is what is going to ultimately lead to better outcomes for real people. And so the other thing that I really liked about it was that his emphasis on kind of patriotic problem-solving people. And unfortunately, most of our politicians are not really problem solvers. They kind of exist to perpetuate a lot of the status quo, unfortunately. And that's what we all liked about Yang, was that he took a very problem-solving approach. And I think, unfortunately, being locked into this mindset of, you know, Biden versus Trump, these are both not problem-solving people. And we at least need to advance the idea that something different is possible. And that's kind of why I'm pro this, I think. And the very last point is that, unfortunately, I think the way that power dynamics work, whenever a politician knows they have your vote, unfortunately, they don't have to do anything for you then. It's a cynical view, but I think that Biden does have a lot of support. He's way up in the polls, and I know crazy things can happen. But I think that the more it's inevitable that he's going to get elected, which it seems to be trending in that way, and that's great. I would not mind that. But unfortunately, I think it's going to cause him to be less open to adopting policies that are more progressive and that will actually help real people. So the more inevitable it is that he's going to win, I think it's less likely that people with the mindset of Yang will actually have influence on his policies, unfortunately. So I think having another idea for them to contend with will make them more likely to address policies that would help people.
And let me just ask you a quick follow-up before we move on to Alex, Cody. What would success look like? You mentioned that, hey, you acknowledge it's probably not going to result in a new occupant in the Oval. So what would success be?
Yeah. So I think success is just like literally just getting as many people following this Twitter account for Unity 2020, as many people putting their email on a list that says, yes, I think this is a good idea. I see this as kind of a technology adoption curve, and the people, the very early, like 2.5% are going to be the fanatical people. And then you kind of have to fight your way up to that next 10%, 15%. And if we can just show that like 1 million people think that this is a good idea, and I think that there's way more people that think that this would be a potentially good idea, even if it isn't possible. If we could say that this chunk of people believes that something outside of the status quo is better, and that both parties potentially working together is a good idea in principle, then that will cause the already entrenched parties to have to think about how they can change their platform to appeal to types of people that are disillusioned with both parties. And so I'm not going to say that these people are actually going to be in office, but we need to get this idea out there as kind of a third idea to be able to contend with these kind of entrenched establishment parties that we have right now. So I just think a big following and enough people talking about this is a win.
Got it. Alex, what do you think? What's your take?
Yeah, so I agree with Cody on the idea of sort of intellectual fertilization, which is getting the fields ready to sow some seeds. But I also I want to hit your concerns head on, Tom. I'm actually a Biden guy. I think that 4 more years of Trump would be an absolute disaster. Not for the reasons most people think, but mostly for the reasons of just what he's doing to truth and conversation. But my thing with the Darkhorse Duo is that, for me, I think it helps Biden. I don't think that it's likely. I think it's got less than a 1% chance of actually going through. But what I see is an opportunity to re-engage those that are going against Biden. I don't know if you saw the recent poll that Bret Weinstein put out, but 30% of the Darkhorse Duo supporters were going to vote for Trump, 30% for Biden, and the other third for either not voting or Joe Jorgensen or some random write-in or Andrew Yang. So for me, I see an opportunity to re-engage those disaffected and the lost flock, so to speak, re-engage them in conversation and get them back to going for Biden. And that's my first point. And my second point is, if you understand anything about politics, you'll know that individual votership doesn't really count. What really matters, and Cody spoke to this, what really matters is voting is a voting block, a political block. And since we were all coordinated around Andrew Yang and he was our glue and his ideas were our glue, I don't see it as we're being fragmented by this idea. I see it as we were already fragmented, and this is an opportunity to reestablish our voting block and to actually reclaim that political power that actually affects how leaders make decisions.
All right, before I move on to Fred, Alex, let me ask you a quick follow-up. And before I do that, let me see. I think I can pull up the chart you were referring to. This is, I saw tweeted by Bret. And I think it shows that before learning about Unity, it seems like it's pulling from roughly similar numbers of Biden and Trump people, and then some people were not going to do anything, and another good third were just going to write in a different person. I guess my question is, like, what if that poll's wrong? Like, what if it does pull more from Biden, and we wake up and he loses, Florida by a fraction of a percent or something crazy? Do you feel like, I'd be a little worried that this is probably a poll of Unity people, like, so it may not be even representative of the movement if it were to get further along.
Sure. I think the faulty assumption that you're making, Tom, is that the Unity Party would run if they didn't have consensus across Americans. And this is the straw man argument that everyone seems to be making. I wouldn't support this thing if I thought that they were going to split the vote. It's the candidates are not going to run. It's if they can't win. And honestly, like for me, anytime America has such a low voter turnout, what is it, 40% in your country? In the Bahamas, it's 90%. Anytime you can get the citizenry engaged and better informed on the issues, it bodes better for our democracy. And honestly, if we were more informed and we were more engaged in politics in America, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in now. So the only thing I see is it's a net positive. I think all the naysayers for this they're attacking a straw man argument, and they're focusing on, if you know Bayesian probability or statistics, they're focusing on negligible threats, and they're not focusing on the opportunities.
All right. Well, we'll definitely we'll have to get into the whole spoiler argument in a bit. Before we do that, let's get Fred's take. Fred's, what's your perspective on this as you observe and kind of participate in these conversations?
So I'm going to take a little bit different route. I'm just going to talk about logistics, because he mentioned McRaven and Yang. Immediately, I'm like, this is an awesome idea. I went and created a petition for, McRaven Yang. I like McRaven as president, actually, and Yang as vice president, so he doesn't get as much of a accusatory toward the DNC, vibe going. But I just want to say that right now we don't have the two candidates that would push forward. We don't have an agreement from them. We don't have a confirmation of, can we get on every ballot in every state in every situation, right? There's just so many unknowns. And so the premise of the Darkhorse Duo is to create a groundswell that is so incredibly large that Americans are that somebody will step forward.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in like leading organizations and watching things happen, basically what you have is you have a vision and you have a person that drives that vision, and that person's leadership style, what it does is it gets people fired up. And I think we're working this, if this is ever really going to become a real reality, we're working this like from the ends to the middle, so to speak. We're kind of putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. So we have to find out, like, who are the candidates? Can we get on every ballot in every state? And then who are the people that would be our coalition? And if we can get the answers to all those things in the next couple weeks, then I'm in. If not, like, it's just, I don't really see it as viable.
Cody, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
You know, you in your initial comments, you mentioned that this is more about getting people to think about an alternative, like a movement, a different perspective. But do you agree with Fred that at some point we're going to need names?
Yeah, I completely agree with Fred's concern. I think that is like, this is such a different way of going about politics, doing it with like the broader idea first without having the leaders push it initially. But like I said, this is something that if it hits a certain level, once it hits a certain level, there will be some well-known, patriotic, smart problem solver that will step up, but it has to get to a certain level of support before that happens. Everyone is making a cost-benefit analysis that this idea right now is too small for me to even get involved in. It would be very dumb for Andrew Yang to get involved with this right now, because that would ruin his relationship with the DNC. That would do a lot of bad things. But if there was a Yang type, or even Yang himself, that saw a movement like this that had several million followers, that had enough clout to where the cost-benefit analysis was much better for them to actually make that jump, then someone would actually be able to go on and co-opt it and take it over. And because it's so small now, it would be almost dumb for anyone to jump on and do it right now. But if it gets big enough, there's a lot of incentive for someone who really cares about this problem to jump in and be the leader of the movement. It would be set for them. It would be a very easy thing to kind of take over and work with these very smart problem-solving type people like Bret Weinstein and others who support this. So that's my whole thing, is like, let's give it the opportunity for a patriotic problem solver to have it worth their cost-benefit analysis to get into it. So and it has to hit a certain amount of clout for that to happen. So that's kind of my thing, is like, it takes 30 seconds to follow a Twitter account and put your email address on. And I know a lot of people are saying that, you know, we could be better spending our time supporting down ballot candidates, and that's great. I really support that. But like, if you think this idea is like even somewhat interesting, and I would think that most people who, you know, are into Yang at least think that a heterodox view of politics is interesting, because that's what this is, then the 30 seconds it takes to follow and put your email address on is worth it to see if that person would make the jump, and then we could be in a whole different ballgame. So that's what I think.
What do you think, Alex?
Well, I'd like to dispel any concerns that anyone listening or watching might have about the. I mean, okay. So first of all, you don't want Yang or anyone getting into this. This is a proof of concept. You don't want anyone tarnishing anything. This is really just testing the fields. It's market research to see who values unity more than they value partisanship. And when you look at the polls, the majority of Americans do appreciate that. Look, but the bottom line is the Yang Gang are still united by a central set of nonpartisan ideas. And if we are to be successful in politics, we need to grow our voting bloc. So not having Yang-McRaven as the sticker, and just using the generic or neutral Darkhorse Duo, this enables us to, sorry, that's thunder and lightning. This enables us to actually, the Darkhorse Duo group can actually be a lot bigger. It can be disaffected burners. It can be conservatives who want a golden bridge to get away from Trumpism. This is an opportunity, and like we can seed the Darkhorse Duo group with Yang people, and we can actually start getting these conversations going. And the only benefit, it can only be a benefit from increasing our group from beyond our very narrow lane of people who like Andrew Yang. More is better.
Then why not just say this is a movement to encourage all of us to think about outside the traditional two-party system, and this is a long-term initiative, and it's not trying to change November 3rd, 2020. Like, why even bring this 2020 conversation here up to? We all agree we don't have a name. That means we're not going to get on the ballot. Like, why not play the long game?
So let me answer that. So I want to dispel with the fiction that people who are doing this Darkhorse Duo thing would otherwise be campaigning and knocking doors for Biden. Look, let's be honest. Biden is not motivating. You know, the thing about the Darkhorse Duo run is it's so exciting that it really gets people all passionate and riled up. I mean, look at Twitter. Look at the conversations that we've been having about this thing. People are going insane for or against it, even though I think most of the energy and passion is actually coming from just being inside your house and being scared of economics or coronavirus. But the point is, I mean, just look what's happened. We've engaged people. I mean, if you trust the poll, 70% of people that weren't going to go for Biden, all of these people are so passionate now. I mean, I think that they were never going to get that excited about Biden doing, you know, I mean, a half awake podcast out of a bunker. Yeah. You know, this is nothing but good. And so the two are not mutually exclusive. I donate to Yang Congress people all the time. You know, I can do this too. All it does, listen, you get on Twitter, you click the link, you sign up your name. It's a simple game theoretic, split or steal. And I'm picking split. So, and guess what? Vote, you know, if it doesn't work, vote for Biden. I mean, and let's be honest, it's probably not going to work, but let's do it. Let's get the people on board. Let's get the names. That come 2024, we have an email list we can send out propaganda to.
Fred, are you convinced? I mean, it sounds like one of the things that Cody and Alex are saying is that it's not necessarily about the names. It's more about kind of unifying people.
Totally 100% about the names, right? Like, to me, right? Like the way my, I might not be the charts and graphs, analytical guy, but I use data to make a decision, right? Like I don't get emotion. I don't make my emotion or make emotions the driving force of my decision-making process. So literally, like my brain doesn't work this way. Like if anybody's seen my my argument for or against the DHD, Darkhorse Duo, right? It is like, okay, these are the answers. These are the questions that need to be answered. And if we don't get these 5 to 6 questions answered, then the way my brain works, I can't make an informed decision. That's the way I think of it. Now, if we can get the people, obviously we've got Yeezy that came forward, and honestly, I legitimately think he sucks slightly less than Biden and Trump, right? He sucks slightly less. What?
He's
to
not
me,
super
Biden's-
stable.
What?
He's not super
We should
stable.
talk about.
He is terribly unstable, right? He is terribly unstable, right? I mean, he's a total narcissistic reality TV star and rapper, right? And you know, God bless his wife. And
Like
and
Kanye in the Situation Room at 3 in the
Yeah.
morning.
Hey,
That's not a conversation we need to have.
but the thing is, it's an FU to the establishment, right?
Well, that definitely would be FU to this house.
This whole thing is.
Here's the kicker, and Bret actually said, "Hey, reach out to me, whatever." Right? My thing is, if I was going to pick a rap star, right, he would be him and Eminem would probably be my last picks, right? I would pick somebody like Common or even Killer Mike, right, which I'm not a big fan of because he blew up Yang, right? Like I could see somebody like Common being a presidential candidate, right? Or if I was going to pick an athlete, I could see somebody like a LeBron. Yeezy is, I will say he's a genius, right? He's a genius. But man, he's just he's a terrible pick for president, right?
But you really want a name. You want someone.
Yeah.
I mean, Cody and Alex, it sounds like your position, if you took it to an extreme, like you don't even need a name.
Yeah, let me just chime in here. So I actually think it's better right now without a name, because once you get that name attached to it, you start pigeonholing it and you start kind of breaking it down in bad ways. We need to grow this concept, this idea. And so the thing that I loved about Andrew Yang is that Andrew Yang talked about the word incentives. Incentives control everything. People, especially smart, powerful people, do not do anything unless there are incentives, and they weigh the pros and the cons on both sides. That's how people work. And so it can make the incentive for this idea big enough. Believe me, the Weinsteins of the world are having conversations with smart, patriotic problem solvers right now, and it is not big enough of incentive for someone like that to jump in. So what I'm saying is, let's get enough energy behind this right now so that there is a big enough incentive for a smart person to jump in and be one of the two people that does this, because there's not enough incentive behind it now because it's too small. So we need to give it a chance for that to happen. And
but how does that grow? How do you grow a movement without a leader? And to be quite honest with you, I know people love Bret, right? Bret has 125,000 followers on his YouTube channel, and the
connections that whole people, that world of like intellectual podcasters have is crazy. They can get in touch with most people that they wanted.
But
behind the scenes, he's advising Yang behind the scenes. Like I wouldn't really worry too much about that.
Yeah, but here's the kicker, right? People like Andrew Yang or myself or Alex or you, Tom, we know who people like the Weinsteins of the world, Sam Cedar, we know who Sam Harris is. If I go and I asked my lady, hey, do you know who Bret Weinstein is? She was like, never heard of him, right? And so if you don't have somebody like a Joe Rogan, right, who's like willing to go out on a limb and really yell this from the rooftops, what's that?
I'm just saying that these people will start yelling this from the rooftops once there is enough of a groundswell for this idea. So if we get 1 million people backing this idea, it will become part of the national conversation. Rogan will invite people on. Mainstream smart people will start considering being a part of this. They will start talking to people like The Rock. And I'm not going to say yeah, I'm not trying to say that would be an actual person. And I think the Kanye conversation is silly, but there is not incentive enough for smart people to take the risk to get onto this right now. So we have to build the incentive by having enough support behind this to at least give it a chance. If it doesn't work, that's fine, but we at least need to give it some type of chance by following it and saying that this is at least a good idea.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Fred.
No, I was going to say one of the plays that I think is really integral is for RCV, right? Ranked choice voting. So in the event we were to get the people in place and get on the ballot, Bret's idea is to not be a spoiler. My idea, if it was, if it was mine, would be to hold the election hostage until we got ranked choice voting on the ballot, and say, look, I will 100% bow out if we get ranked choice voting on the ballot, right, in every state. But I think that I don't know if that can be done within that 4-month time frame, but
it'd be a bit of a different conversation. But yeah.
Well,
yeah, it's July, and this thing's wrapping up in a few months.
Yeah, I understand, but the reason, the root cause of this duopoly is that we have Citizens United, we don't have Democracy Dollars, and we don't have ranked choice voting. If we had those three things, it would change our democracy. The shape of our democracy is in jeopardy because to reach across the aisle takes 15-foot arms now, right? Everybody is so far fractured, we can't get anything done. And right now, especially in election time, if we want to put an HR code forward, people in the back of their mind are saying, I don't want the Republicans to get a win, or I don't want a Democrat to get a win. They're not thinking about the people. They're not putting the people first. Yep. They're only putting political strategy first.
But wouldn't that, ranked choice voting, I'm supportive. I think to implement it, we're talking about changing at a minimum state constitutions and potentially the federal constitution. That just doesn't happen no matter who I have a third party candidate and he has a few percent. Like, they're going to be like, whatever.
All these ideas stem from a desire to need to show publicly that people want heterodox thinking, new type of ideas being introduced. And it kind of has to be nebulous now. You need to get a groundswell of people saying, we want this, so that there's enough power to say, we might not vote for these two candidates. And then that will then force them to adopt stuff like this. It's all power. It's all kind of influence. And we just need to get as many people saying, we are upset that we have these two corrupt, decrepit candidates that we are not happy with, that we're pretending to support right now because we're scared of the other one getting elected. And that is how the vast majority of people think. And they don't have any other choice. So they're pretending to like these two candidates. And so we need to say that, like, hey, take a chance, take 2 minutes and sign up for something that will help force these two parties to act differently. That is all that I'm saying. That is the only way to get them to act differently at this point.
Alex, I'd like to get your thoughts on, clearly we've had a little bit of a good dialogue around, do we need a name? Don't we need a name? I have another topic that I was curious that we could kick off with you, Alex. I've seen some people say, hey, there are third parties. It's not a duopoly. There's a Green Party. There's a Libertarian Party. Why do we need this Unity Party? Do you have a view on whether it needs to be a brand new party? Or because the argument for the other ones is they're more established, they already have some kind of infrastructure.
Yeah, so for me, it has nothing to do with the parties. You're not going to escape the two-party structure at all unless you get a lot of people all at once agreeing, again, in a game theoretic sense, that the two-party structure is a prison. But so to address your question, I think what it comes down to is really memetics and the spread of ideas. The whole thing with social media and echo chambers is we've actually removed conversation feedback loops. So before, where you might go and have conversations with people in the train or something, and you say something wacky, they'd be like, "Oh, hey, that's wacky," you know, and then that would be a feedback, and you'd change your thinking. But now, since everyone's in these ideological bubbles, we're all in information silos. We just keep on reinforcing these wacky ideas, and we get more and more polarized. So if to what Fred was talking about, which is just bringing rationality and reason back to politics, first of all, we need to rebuild conversation. Like Yasha Monk just came out with a new platform called Persuasion, where he's doing exactly this. The extreme poles of the political spectrum have taken over and dominated all conversation. And we need to rebuild the center and reclaim the center. And I think that this is the kind of mechanism to do that. This is something that gets people passionate and engaged.
The problem when people say rebuild the center is people on both sides are saying the center is where none of the passion is, right? So if you're on either side of the argument, so if you're on either side of the argument, let's say you're let's say you're the Hill, right? And so you got that publication, and you're saying, well, why would I support the center when, I'm a Bernie publication, right? Or if you're Fox News or CNN, why would I support something that is center when I'm peddling either the right or the left? So it's very, very difficult. And again, I point everything back to the lack of the ability to say, hey, this is my 1A for president, but this is my 1B, right? Yeah. And we don't, ranked choice voting is, and obviously we're probably not going to get it in the next 3 to 4 years, right? But we need to pound the desk, just like we've been pounding the desk for UBI. We need to pound the desk for ranked choice voting. And I make the argument that if I had the choice between ranked choice voting and UBI right now today, I would take ranked choice voting. Because
Fred,
it allows me to open up so much other things.
Let's see what Alex
so my argument to you, Fred.
What's that?
My argument to you, Fred, would be that this is complementary to that. If you want people signing signatures, you want people petitioning, you want people engaged in voting, again, let me draw your attention to America's abysmal 40% voter turnout. Andrew Yang did something amazing by bringing nuance back to politics. And in many ways, he actually reinvigorated the center. I mean, because most of Yang supporters weren't that extreme. So the fact that we all realized that it's actually okay for smart people to have political discussion again, this is the seeds for a beautiful thing. This is exactly what we need to do to fix American politics.
Cody, I would love to get your thoughts on a related topic to what we've just been talking about, which is I have heard people say, I'm tired of these two parties. We want, if we elect Biden, we're just going to get the same thing. But my understanding of the Unity 2020 strategy is a center-left, center-right combination.
Yeah.
Which by definition is a moderate, approach. So I don't know what would change if we did that. And do you feel like there's any inconsistency there where on the one hand, people are saying, I'm tired of the same two parties. I mean, literally the DNC nominated the most moderate, he's not going to change a whole lot candidate you can think of. Yeah. Like Biden is as close to the center as you can get in the DNC. So why are we looking for a center right, center left combo? What does that do for us?
So, I mean, one of my thoughts is that, I mean, there was that whole Hidden Tribes report that came out that said like 80% of the people, 86% of the people fall into this exhausted majority, which comprises pretty much everything but the radical wings of both sides of the party. And a lot of people would be totally fine with just the temperature being ratcheted down and things not being so divisive. And that is what this is going at. And having two people that can have a civil conversation on both sides, one that might be a little bit more right, one that might be a little bit more left, who are also not necessarily politicians within the system. So that's going to mean that they're not necessarily like centrists. And I know centrist is an ugly word in the groups that we traverse in the Yang gang and in the far left and the far right, because that preserves the status quo. But bringing into centrist candidates who are not already within the system would not be like a centrist platform. It would be actually incredibly radical, because they're bringing like rationed logical thought and understanding that there are good things on the left and there are good things on the right that we can talk about. And that you don't have to buy into a whole host of things on the left just because you like one thing, or you don't have to buy into a whole host of things on the right because you like the way that Trump's rhetoric is or whatever. And that's like a fundamental problem with politics, is that people are forced into these decisions that forces them to support a lot of ideas that they don't actually want. So the centrist word, I think, is pretty misleading. And this wouldn't actually bring a centrist in. It would bring in pragmatic problem solvers that are slightly ideological one way or the other, that would kind of shift the entire paradigm. That, like, unfortunately, the way like game theoretical things work, like you have to just bust it right at the middle with a very hard gut punch for anything to change. Because right now, I liked Alex's point about the loss of nuance in conversation. Like, for the next 4 months, the amount of nuance in conversation is going to continue to go down and down and down. It's going to get uglier and uglier and uglier between Trump and Biden. The arguments are going to get stupider and more based on just emotion. And it's going to keep us from talking about things that could actually solve problems. And that's what's already happening. It's just going to get worse. And then no matter who gets elected, it's going to get that much worse afterwards. Let me
speak to what you were saying.
Add something to that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How about Alex? You add, and then Fred, you can jump on after.
I just wanted to coin a term, which I think this is really important. Right now, we're stuck in a sort of a cheap hotel where you get a set meal plan. They give you the appetizer, the hors d'oeuvres, and the dessert. And I think we're possibly making a switch to a la carte politics. So you can actually pick and mix. You can pick which issues. Because I mean, me personally, I don't go with the Democratic platform. I go with them on most issues, but not every single issue. And, I actually respect some things that conservatives have to say, in particular about the conservation of culture. So that's just my 2 cents I wanted to add on to Cody's point.
Thanks, Alex.
Fred? To what you're saying, Alex, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was listening to my lady talk the other night, and she's a liberal, but almost every single thing that comes out of her mouth is very conservative, right? And it's because she sees the things that Donald Trump, or the things that the war lord ways of the the Bush administration prior to, and she's like, I don't want to be a part of that, right? So you have a lot of people that are so incredibly conflicted that the argument for the Darkhorse Duo is a large argument. It's a huge argument. The question I have is in logistics. And I again, the way, I always bring it back to the way my brain makes decisions. I can't, there's not enough information. It's like there's an equation that I'm trying to solve for, and I don't have enough information to solve for that. And and somebody expects me to get fired up about an idea that idea is set up under the constructs that there's a human being that carries said ideas. And if I don't know who that human being is and the character of that human being, therefore I cannot make an informed decision.
It's a logical way of looking.
So, are you a Patriots fan?
Yeah.
I actually am a Patriots fan.
God, no.
I figured. You like to be on the winning team.
Well, I think Fred is making the point that how do we get excited about this? Like, if we take your analogy further, Alex, you're like, hey, you have we have the fixed menu, A or B, and then we have this a la carte thing. And then the guy's like, oh, well, what's on the a la carte? No, I can't tell you. Well, when is the a la carte meal going to be ready? I don't know. Maybe now, maybe later.
It's not.
It's like, well, I need to.
But we need you to support the a la carte menu so we can get the a la carte menu
so that we can find a chef that will cook it. It's like, I need to eat now, goddammit.
Exactly. And to Cody's point, about us devolving over the course of the next 4 months, I want to say that the argument for Trump there's an argument for Trump, right? There is no argument for Biden, right?
Oh, there's arguments for both sides.
No. The argument here's the kicker. The argument for Biden is he's not Trump, right? That is the only argument, right?
There's not the argument. There's many arguments.
That's the argument that matters to most people. I agree.
Yeah, the entire argument for Biden is centered in the fact he is not Donald Trump, right?
Oh, well,
the argument
hold on. I need as the most enthusiastic Biden supporter in this group. Let me give you a few things, Fred, that are beyond that he's not Trump. One is I think he would put a better team in his cabinet. Two is I think
he's
he would
going to need a team.
Yeah, well,
he's not going to be able to do nothing.
All right, let me give you ask for reasons. I'm giving to you, brother. Hold on. So better cabinet. I think we'd probably improve the Affordable Care Act. So we have more healthcare reform. Third, I think we'd have more moderate and progressive Supreme Court justices. Fourth, I think we'd probably improve our engagement with the rest of the world. Now, those are not like Yang, the equivalent of having Yang in the White House, but they're way better than the current Trump team. No healthcare reform, no relations with the rest of the world, and a completely unhinged, untethered Donald.
Don't get me wrong, Tom. I'm not the argument against Trump is a large one, right? A huge argument, right? But the people that are making the argument for Trump are going to be much louder, much more convicted in their decision making. That I know many people like me who are like Trump is a disaster, are going to be like, meh. All right, well, I guess I'm going to have to choke down Biden, right? Like, there's no way I can vote for Trump.
A lot of them just aren't going to vote either. The voting turnout this year is going to be even lower than most previous elections.
Let me show you guys. I want to get your reaction to this this Medium article that I think the Unity 2020 people put out. And there's a specific thing in there, Alex, where they talk about the spoiler risk. And the argument is, no, this will not be a spoiler. And I want to draw your attention to the third paragraph, which talks about a fail-safe. And it says, if at a carefully chosen point prior to the general election, the Unity ticket has no viable path, the candidacy will be suspended. And you're an entrepreneur, Alex. Like, that is not super precise language. Like, when is this? What are the criteria for deciding that there's no viable path? Who makes that decision? Like, I feel like this is very hand wavy.
I understand your concerns, Tom. And I can't speak for the people that wrote this article, but for me, the paragraph rings pretty clear, which is it has no viable path. So if it, as Cody said, if we don't have enough of a critical mass of signatures, if we don't have, the game theoretic quantity necessary to actually to pass it, for me personally, if I'm doing risk analysis, I would err on the side of caution because, I truly do think that America cannot survive 4 more years of Trump. So for me, it's an easy question of when I would suspend the campaign. But I can't speak for the people managing it.
What if where you're at, like when you wrote this document, and where you're at 3 months from now are two totally different, and you're blinded by the addiction of hope that you can make it, right? And you're also, and this kind of happened to Yang Gang, right? Where it's going to be very obvious to us that hey, how's it going, Matt? We are not going to. We're not going to get media support, right? So, how are we going to determine how good we're doing if the Darkhorse Duo was to come to pass, if we're not going to get media support? So people are going to be saying things like, oh, well, we're actually polling better than we are. That's going to be the argument. Is that your fear, Tom?
Fred,
yeah,
I would be pretty obvious.
It's very like.
Is that your fear?
My
Tom?
fear, yeah. And let's say we were at work, like Fred. Let's say we're at a logistics company and we're like starting some new joint venture. We would say these are the criteria that we need to meet to kind of continue this business 6 months from now, or to raise another round of funding, or to invest in another fleet of trucks.
Yeah.
We would not say, well, look, we're going to start this new business. At some point in time in the future, if we determine that it's not viable, well, of course, we'll terminate that business. Like that, it just feels like we should have a specific goal, because this isn't like 3 years from now; it's 3 months from now.
That makes sense.
But Tom, specific goals, smart, measurable, actionable.
Yes.
That's all internal stuff. When you're in marketing, when you're trafficking in hype and you're dealing in passion, that's when you it's really about just spreading the idea and testing the viability of the meme in itself.
All right, I want to welcome Matt from the very famous Zach and Matt show. Matt, this is the first time you've been in the Nerd Zone. So first of all, I need to get a hello nerds from you.
Hello nerds.
Oh, mission accomplished. But Matt, we were just talking about the whole spoiler risk and the fail safe. Yeah. And I was making the point like, all right, here's what it says. It doesn't seem super specific. Like if I were an investor, I might want to ask for some more kind of teeth in the language. And then Alex was saying, well, look, there might be those things internally, but you don't sell consumers on a business plan with like 1 million exhibits. I get that. What do you think, Matt? Do you think there's a risk that this effort, it changes the trajectory and the outcome of the general election, maybe unintentionally?
Well, I mean, in the plan itself, it's designed in a way where, of course, it has that failsafe where it's like built into the plan. It's if it's not going to lead to a winning candidacy, it's just the plan's just going to be shut off. So, and I understand what you're saying is written into the language. It doesn't necessarily have like the concrete details of how it's going to happen. And then that just goes into the whole conversation of, well, we're 4 months away from this thing. It's still being hashed out, and which is kind of another conversation. But I wanted to talk about was just kind of why I feel like there's so many people that are even open to this Darkhorse Duo idea in the first place. And I think a lot of it has to do with just where we are as a country. And this is something that Bret Weinstein talked about when he originally brought up the idea. We are literally we're in a global pandemic. Tens of millions of people are unemployed. Worldwide protests, and then this is the statistic that really stands out to me. I think it showed 70% of Americans see this as the worst moment in American history at any point in their lifetimes, which is just an insane stat. We had 9/11. We can go all the way back to the Vietnam War, even for the older generations, World War II, and for many of them, this tops it. And when we think of we know that Trump's not going to fix anything. We know he's part of the problem. But people look at it and they say, can I reasonably actually expect Biden to fix it? Can I reasonably expect him to actually do anything? And this is a guy who said part of his thing that he said behind the scenes to his donors, Wall Street, nothing will fundamentally change. And like one question I like to pose to like Biden supporters is, or just people who are like, we're really certain about Biden is like, what policy can somebody reasonably expect for him to actually pass in the first year that is actually substantive, that's actually going to move the needle on anything? And the only one somebody could name to me was decriminalize marijuana. And it's like, okay, well, that's one. But then again, it's 2020 and he's a Democrat. He can't even be for legalization. So the point is that for a lot of people, they just don't see it as like Biden being this superior choice to Trump. And there's a lot of people who aren't going to vote for Biden simply because he's not Trump. And that's where I see there's a lot of people who are open to this Darkhorse duo idea. And there seems to be like two camps in the Yang gang. There's like that camp, and then there's the, we can't do anything that will risk Trump getting elected. And I understand both camps. And that's kind of why I think like with this, the whole conversation, how it's kind of transpired over the past 3 weeks. I feel like I feel like there just hasn't been a willingness on the two sides to try to understand each other, and it's led to this point where luckily we're going on shows like this, Tom, and having conversations. So
Matt, one question: at which point, like a week, 2 weeks, a month, at which point do you fold your tent and accept that we have two candidates and that's it?
Well, I mean, I've already accepted personally that we have two candidates, but like if someone else is going to try to do something and it has even 1% chance, it's like, well, why not? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm talking about time frame. Are we thinking a week, 2 weeks, a month?
It doesn't matter. No.
I don't really know.
It doesn't matter.
Like
back to the a la carte menu that Alex talks about.
I'd say a month before.
Yeah. If I order my food, I have to have a reasonable expectation of the food coming to the table, right?
Of course. And as the groundswell for support for this idea grows, they will start to put out more specifics. But the fundamental problem is that, unfortunately, the way that politics is, it does not incentivize, and I don't want to offend anyone, like smart people, problem-solving people to go into it. And an idea like this would actually incentivize people who want to fix problems, who are smart, who are currently in like the private sector, solving problems that give them better like personal incentives. It would incentivize them to jump in and co-opt and take over this movement, and that's what we need. We elect for people that unfortunately are good at riling up people's emotions and making people good about kind of their internal beliefs, and then saying a lot of things, and then things don't really get done. That is what politicians are, unfortunately. And the only way to incentivize well-intentioned problem-solving people to get into politics is by something like this. And so I'm just saying, all I'm saying is if you think that this idea is good in principle to have like two people outside of politics who are ideologically somewhat different, but who are interested in saving the country, and what Matt said is like the worst time that we've ever had, and everyone agrees on that, then you should at least sign up for this idea. Not saying go promote it, say it's the best thing in the world, but be one of the people that is part of that early adoption curve that says like, hey, this is a good idea. If it gets to 1 million, 2 million followers, that shifts the balance of power. And the people who are working on this behind the scenes will have a lot more clout to do things like get big name people involved, start talking about demands and policies, because if there's no clout behind this, then there is no way to have a conversation about changing policies like what you said, Fred, about ranked choice voting, because no one is incentivized to currently do it within the system. So it has to be something completely outside the system that has a lot of support.
So what is the work? Like, what's the actionable? Like, if I had, some work I wanted to do, there would be, shovels, pickaxe, different tools I would use to create said groundswell, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I don't personally believe that, I've got this petition with 1,200 people sign it. People are going to be like, yeah, who cares? So what? Right? Like, what is the groundswell look like? What's that?
Alex, you want to get in?
I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, listen, we're not we haven't even designed the building. This is the capital raising stage. We know that our capital, in this case, it's not money, it's humans. We need 2 million people to sign up. It's anonymous. There's no opportunity cost. Yep. If you even half like the idea, you just put your name and your email there. Yep. It's really, honestly, at worst, it's an interesting thought experiment. But the longer that we delay and the longer the naysayers just, shut down even the thought of even having ideas in general, it's really it's reducing our potential benefits that can be gained from engaging these other people in conversation.
Well, that's where I guess I have a little bit of a concern in terms of the lack of transparency. Like, if I think Unity said, hey, our goal is to get 10 million names. Here's where you sign up. This is the number that we have currently. If we get it by this date, we're going to consider that a clear signal that we need to draft some people. I just haven't seen any of the specifics.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah, so it all comes down to deets. Like, people want the lowdown on like what the plan is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
also
would be shocked if those plans do not come out in the near future. If we get a bit more of a groundswell,
we have 3 months. It's not even 4 months now. We have 3 months till election day.
I think what Alex is saying, what it reminds me of is, I don't know if you remember this, but back during the campaign in Q4, we had this idea where it was like, would you donate $2,800 or $500 or some way more money than you could usually afford to donate if you knew that it would lead to this like $30 million Q4? And there was like this idea going around, a bunch of people trying to pledge money. It's basically the same thing. You're basically saying, look, if this idea were to come into fruition, would I in theory support it over Biden or Trump? Sure. In terms of the actual details, I mean, that's like for the people who are organizing at the top, like Bret Weinstein, to come out with. And if they don't, like, well, we're just at the same place we are right now. It's just Trump versus Biden.
Okay, so at what point do we say, and I'm going to ask this question again, hopefully I can get a solid answer from somebody, right? At what point, a week, 2 weeks, a month, do you say, this idea is dead in the water? Shit canning.
So look, I would call, if I was going to give advice to Bret, I'm not in the war room, but if I was going to give advice, I would put a tracker on the website with the goal of signatures that we want, be a little bit more transparent, and just count the numbers. People like to see a moving thing on the screen to show progress. I would do that. And then, I'd probably stop it before a month. I do gamification. Be more transparent, and that would be my advice to Bret to really get this thing going.
I just want to say I am not a naysayer of the idea. I am a naysayer of the lack of the lack of like solid like just details that we can make a decision with. I love the idea.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw by the end of July, a month, 4 weeks from now, if we had 1 million names and we had 2 people that we want to draft, then even I, as a pro Biden guy, would be like, this is interesting. But I would also say, if we don't get that at that point, my nightmare scenario is the automatic fail shut off device thing, like somehow, surprise, surprise, doesn't work, or we disagree on the data. And we wake up on November 4th and we're like, oh shit, Trump won Florida and North Carolina by a hair. And part of the narrative leading up to that was that both parties suck. They're just equally bad. Biden is garbage. And because Unity 2020 was starting to work, and it worked just well enough to influence the election. And now we look up and we've got Jared and, Barr and Ivanka running around like untethered, which to me is a nightmare scenario. I appreciate not everybody listening to this thinks that's that bad, but for me, it's like, oh my God, please. If you said Darkhorse Duo 2024, I might even give money now just to get you not to do 2020.
Yeah. I understand that concern, Tom, and I want to try to explain, I think, the perspective of people that don't share quite the level of like fear and concern as you do, though I do think that concern is valid. And I think it goes back to what Andrew said during his stump speech, as he would say, Trump is not he's not the cause of all our problems, he's a symptom. And people look at it again and they say, well, if Biden becomes president for 4 years, is that going to fundamentally change the trajectory? Is that going to solve the actual problems that caused Donald Trump to get elected in the first place? And I feel like for a lot of people that's no. But there is, of course, like there's a really good argument still to vote for Biden anyways, because it's like, well, we have to at least put ourselves in some sort of like trajectory to move us out of this. And I think, was it you were talking about the Biden bridge on Twitter? Or is that somebody else?
Not me, but
okay. Somebody was like hashtag Biden bridge. It's a bridge to 2024.
All right. Yeah. I like that argument. I mean, I know there's been the positioning of Biden as a transitional administration along those lines.
Yeah. But, some people, I think some people, they just see things as just so like effed that it's like, what do we have to lose? And I don't know, like if that's something that I necessarily agree with, but I think it is like a feeling that's kind of valid.
Mm-hmm. The nuance I would offer, and I'll let Andrew speak for himself, but what I interpret him saying is that Trump being elected was the symptom of problems that the country was encountering for many, many years. I would not say that precludes us from also saying the last 4 years of Trump's style of leadership, the people he's hired, the people who keep quitting on him, the deals he's making, I think those in and of themselves are quite reprehensible. So I agree that his election was a symptom, but I do think the last 4 years under him, I mean, look, Matt, I think part of the reason why people think the country's in such terrible shape is because we haven't had a unifier in the Oval. We haven't had someone trying to at least acknowledge the other perspectives. Yeah. Like they're all a lawless mob. They're all trying to take away our heritage. And, that's not the reality. I mean, that's not the nuance of America. We're a very diverse place.
No, you're 100%. You're 100% right. But the one, if I want to play like contrarian, the one counter argument, I guess, would be is, are we seeing that leadership from Biden? And I don't necessarily know if we are. Like, we aren't seeing him going out and giving these resounding speeches that are uniting and bring everyone together. He's kind of just staying out of the spotlight, which might be a winning strategy, but I don't know for him to beat Trump. But I don't know if it's the best use of his voice right now in terms of trying to unite the country. Right?
So if you're trying to push back on that, though,
coronavirus, what do you expect Biden to do? He might die if he gets COVID.
No, I don't mean it like that. I mean like more so on the protests and on the if you want to use the word like the race, I don't want to say race riots, but the racial polarization and divides we're seeing. Like, I personally, I just wish there was some sort of leadership from anybody at the national level, and I don't necessarily see that as being Biden either. Like, we know it's not Trump.
You know, you would be surprised. He has been putting out videos of him talking about these issues. Unfortunately, I don't think the media finds it very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying very centrist, moderate things, and he's not talking about, you know, oh, the Chinese hatched this on us, or we have to defend George Washington's statue from the angry mob and all this stuff. What Biden does is he tends to take a middle ground on this stuff. And I feel like people don't want to hear that. And the media doesn't want to cover it for sure.
I think the sad fact is that both of these candidates have such a built up like past and history and so many things ingrained in everyone's mind that they know about them. Biden has statements that go against things that he's trying to say that he supports now, has a long history of saying things and then not supporting them, and then kind of his positions now not being what he said in the past. So the reality is that we have two wings that are, if Biden wins, the Trump wing is going to be very riotous and cause a lot of bad things. And if Trump wins, then the other side is going to be doing the same thing. There's going to be mass protests, whoever wins this election. Both sides are also going to be putting us through this basically psychological warfare and getting more people into mental health issues, which is what's currently happening with all this stuff. And it's going to be a disaster either way. And then not to mention what's going to happen with the vote counts and recounts and both sides saying that they actually won. It's going to happen either way. It's inevitable. And the only way to prevent all of that is this type of long shot idea that could be very, very different and is very uncomfortable because it's not the normal way that we think about things. But in my opinion, it's literally the only way to prevent very mass, terrible things from happening. And there's a lot of criticism for the plan, I agree. And there's a lot of things that need to be changed quickly. But if we don't at least like sign up and say that this is in principle a good idea, then we're going to be stuck with two bad outcomes for society in general, in my opinion.
So the biggest question is, if that's the way we feel, I'm already signed up on the website, but can you pull up, Tom, like how people would take action?
Yeah, I don't even know what website should we go to? Unity2020.com, maybe?
Oh, I think it's Articles of Unity, right?
Unity?
Yeah. So you go to articlesofunity.com.
Okay, hold on.
No.
Unity.
Sign up, maybe make a tweet and say, hey, this is an interesting idea. Might not work, but it's interesting. And that's literally
while you're pulling that up, where is everybody at with Yeezy?
Oh God.
And that's
Tom, because
I'll start by saying I don't want anyone in the White House who you would not see hired at a complex business. And I mean, come on, like, would any of us hire Yeezy to run a business that we invested in? Like, he's a great entertainer. He's a brand. He's a thoughtful person when it comes to art and culture. But an executive leader? No.
Yeah, of course not. He knows
if he was half of the ticket, that would be a hard no for me. I mean, Donald Trump is bad, but at least we actually know his type of crazy. We don't know Yeezy type of crazy. Like Yeezy he's said some crazy things. I'm not sure exactly how strong his beliefs in the supernatural are, crystals, all that shit. It scares me a little bit.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate, the one small granule of something interesting about that is that he's at least opening up the idea of a paradigm shift for having some type of new idea by saying that. And I would not want him to be the candidate. I don't think he would be a good politician at all. But just the fact that someone with a big name would even say that, and people would like retweet it, even like consider it, even if it's in a joking manner. It shows that there is some type of clamoring for something different, because most people deep down know that both of these people that we are considering right now are not great.
Terrible.
Yeah.
You can lie to yourself and not think that's true, but I think a lot of people feel that way.
You're 100% right, Cody. And I just want to say real quick, like, I think Kanye would be a terrible president, but then you do look at it and like we have a system that has produced the past 2 election cycles: Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden. That's like our options. And there's a lot of people, again, like it wasn't that long ago that Americans took a chance on a reality TV star as president, narcissistic reality TV star. So, and things have gotten worse since then. It doesn't seem like we have any options that's actually going to solve any of that in a real way moving forward. So it doesn't surprise me to see like Americans are willing to take a chance on another TV star. And it goes to what Jonathan Muniz said, where he's like, if we had, think about it like this, he said, if we had Yang or Bernie as the nominee, would people have like gotten super excited or actually taken Kanye seriously? Probably not. Like they would have just laughed it off. It's because our options are so bad that people are even like entertaining Kanye at all. Sorry, go ahead, Fred.
No, I was going to say, we've had a few we've had a few conversations about, menus and stuff like that, a la carte. I feel like they took a gamble on Donald Trump, and I feel like Kanye would be like, we lost, run them back, let's do double or nothing, right? That's kind of like how I feel the gamble is, right? And I think a lot of people would feel that a double or nothing bet, because the bet of Biden is so terrible and the bet of Trump is so terrible that some people are like, this sucks slightly less.
Yeah. If you're in team burn it down, Kanye's your candidate. And there's a lot of people who are still in team burn it down.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Enough about Kanye. You guys are scaring the crap out of me. But I appreciate that Kanye would be a giant FU to the system. I just would hope that he doesn't end up in the Situation Room. But let me ask you guys this. Let's take some audience questions, and then we'll have some final remarks from everyone. Oh, we lost Alex. Alex is back. So we're going to take some audience questions. One person, let me just, my scrolling, was asking, hey, is there anything that Biden is for that aligns with humanity first? And, did we lose Matt?
Fred.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. There we go. Then we got everybody. So I'll take this one because I think I'm the only enthusiastic Biden supporter. I would just give you 3 things. I think Biden would move further on healthcare reform, climate, and I think he would actually, if not put Yang in the administration, I think Yang would be closer to the inner circle, and that would be great. Now, I'm not saying he's a slam dunk. I'm not saying Biden would be like, Jesus, but he would be way better than the other guy, in my opinion. And those are 3 specific things: cabinet, healthcare, environment. Now, here's a question from Bag Ops. What does the volunteer game plan look like for Unity?
For Duo?
Yeah, for the Duo. I mean, I went to that website. I looked articlesofunity.com. It's just a Medium host.
Yeah, I wish that was more explicit. That'd be like the biggest criticism I have, is some of the details we've been talking about, and the fact that it is not explicit about like how people can like help out other than tweet and follow and like add your email to their list.
I think that's all that it really should be at this point. Like, this is something that, as Fred talked about earlier in the conversation, to generate the groundswell is going to be like the Joe Rogans of the world screaming from the rooftops, go to this website and sign up. Like, I think in terms of volunteers and like the Yang Gang stuff, they should probably just stick to, pushing the down ballot candidates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you are intrigued by Articles of Unity, you could just go to articlesofunity.com, and there is at the bottom of the Medium post an opportunity to sign up and get more information. And I tend to agree with what Alex and Cody were saying. Like, there's no downside. Yeah, fine. And I'm a big supporter of more competition. I just don't like the timing. But that's what the volunteer plan at the moment is. Hopefully, when you sign up, you'll get some more information at some point.
Basically, there's no plan.
Tom.
Yes.
I got to tell you this story about Biden that actually I thought it was his best debate answer of the cycle.
All right.
He was asked, I forget what the question was exactly, but he talked about how, he is someone who's lost his wife and children in a car accident. Yeah. And then, he had another son that he lost to cancer, just like a lot of the personal things that he's gone through in his life. But he said, but I know that there are millions of Americans who wake up every single day and they're going through things that are way harder and way worse than I've gone through. And they still put on their boots, get up, go to work, get their crap done. And that was something I was like, I remember watching at the time. I was like, hey, Biden. So that's my Humanity First Biden story. I think it's a good, really good. It really am
I think his heart and his core values are probably closer to Yang's than Trump's are.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't think Trump has values besides Trump's king.
All right, next quick one. Nell wants to say hi to Matt and Fred, so he's very excited to see you guys here. Thanks, Nell. Here's a question from Witty Smitty. Witty Smitty says, who beyond Bret is the leadership of this movement? Or is it one of those things where, there isn't leadership? It's just sort of like truly grassroots, I guess, is the
It's argument. Anonymous, bro. There is no leadership.
Yeah, it's truly anonymous.
It's some conglomeration of online intellectuals who want to solve problems and are scared about what's going to happen. But I know that they are well connected and could probably get in touch with most anyone that they wanted to. But I don't know.
But why do they need to be anonymous? Why don't they just put their name out there?
I mean, I wish
they're not anonymous. I mean,
I was kind of making a joke.
They're waiting. They're waiting for the groundswell to come up.
Yeah.
But that's like, I have the secret chef. It's like, all right, well, who's the chef that's going to make this stuff? Who's behind in the kitchen? Like, what the hell are they cooking?
I think it's
Go ahead. Someone was you?
I think for this type of thing, I think it's much easier to cut down people because people are flawed and human. And I think if they put too many people in the spotlight up at first, this idea will be much easier to shoot down, whether it's the people who they're going to have running or the people who are running it. So the fact that not a lot of that has been shown, I agree, is a part of concern. But also it allows for people to get behind the idea because the idea is like the important thing. And then hopefully in the near future, the other pieces will be filled in.
I think the idea is the greatest idea I've heard in years with the poorest implementation I've ever seen in years.
All right, next question. Will the Yang Gang help people sign up to Unity 2020?
If you support it, I mean, if you think it's a good idea, you could just tweet out like, hey, here's the link.
We're not going to be scraping your emails and signing you up for it, but it is not too hard to go put your email address in and just say, hey, this is a cool idea in principle. I mean, how many email lists are you already on? How much time do we already waste on Facebook, on Twitter every single day doing non-productive things? This is at least somewhat productive to show that you think this is a decent idea.
It's a great idea.
It does touch on a topic. It touches on a topic I've heard other people talk about, which is to make it very clear that the Yang 2020 or Yang 2024 and the Unity 2020 they might have overlapping populations, but they're not the same. And Andrew's not behind this. And there's a lot of Yang who are, skeptical.
That's being nice.
I wonder.
So it's a free country. If you like it, then you should support it. And
yeah, I wonder if we could put just it to complete rest to bed. Like, is Andrew for this idea? If we could reach out to him some way and get a confirmation, is he for or against this idea?
I think
it's a terrible idea.
I think what Andrew's for is whatever is the best way to get his policies passed as soon as possible. If this minuscule chance where the groundswell actually takes off and there's 50% of the population calling for an alternative, I think he'd jump in. But the chances of that actually happening are slim to none. But I don't think this is an idea where you even bring Yang into it unless you ever even reach that groundswell point.
Yeah.
Alex, you're about to give your thoughts on whether we should put Andrew on the spot.
It's absolutely a terrible idea. You want him as far away from this as possible. He shouldn't touch this with a 50-foot pole.
I agree.
And that's it. This is market research.
I was messaging a friend last night, and I was like, they were talking about, Yang needs to unsuspend or whatever. I was like, gosh, at this point, like, Yang should just stay as far away from this hellhole known as 2020. Like, he's way too precious. We got to just keep him.
Yeah, he's doing what he needs to do within the system, and that is what he needs to do now, because that's the only way he could kind of get to power in the future. But if I were to guess, if this idea has enough groundswell, at some point he would. I mean, he's not going to come out and say it ever. But in the back of his mind, I would say he would probably think this is not a horrible idea, because it's essentially a lot of the same things that he was saying during his campaign about, hey, there are good things on both sides. We do not need to be demonizing both sides, because that has led to a lot of the awful rhetoric that we're currently being oppressed with in society. But yeah, he shouldn't touch it now.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be
I think our focus should be to spread.
Go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, I think our focus should be to spread this. We should spread this idea, try to spread it faster than you guys are spreading coronavirus. That should be our goal.
Yeah.
That's all right. I was just going to add that I think if he indicated any interest in this, it would be immediate excommunication from the Democratic Party. He just endorsed Biden just a few months ago to then say, I'm going to run in some dark horse thing where I don't even know who's running it and I don't have any success criteria. Like, even I would be like, whoa, bro, I'm not sure about your judgment. Like, I would say, like, I agree with you guys. If we had 10 million signatures and there are people who are like pounding their fist on the table, then he could reluctantly say, well, the people have really spoken. I cannot ignore this great. Here's a question from Jay Late. Has anybody expressed willingness to be to be on the ticket outside of Andrew, even like maybe McRaven?
Kanye,
Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
Okay. So those are the only ones. No McRaven, right? McRaven. I wonder.
So there's actually a question with McRaven. I think he actually left to like politics and public office because I might be wrong on this, but I think he actually developed cancer, so he wanted to focus on his health.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't necessarily know if he'd be an option either, but there's people who would do it. I just don't know what the names are.
No big names, probably.
Would a Tulsi Gabbard do it? I mean, she already is
a pretty big
out
name.
of the DNC.
Yeah, maybe she should. Has she said she'd be open to it?
I don't think so.
No. All right.
Yeah.
Sue wants to put us.
She's a great choice.
on the spot. I agree. I like Tulsi too. Sue wants to know, come November 3rd, what are you going to do, Cody? And then we'll do Cody, Matt, Alex, and Fred.
So if it was today,
Yeah.
I would write in a vote for Andrew Yang, because I think that the state that I live in California it's not going to make that big of a difference. But I think that people need to start kind of supporting what they actually care about, what good things are for the country. The more support that someone like Yang gets, even as a write-in candidate, is going to bend the political will in the future. And kind of being forced to go vote, quote unquote, on gunpoint for two people that you don't like, even though I agree Biden is probably the best choice. I would vote for him if it was now. However, I think there's still time for Biden to announce who his VP is, announce that I think smart problem-solving type people could be in his cabinet, could be his VP, and start talking about policies that I would support. So I think that there's still a chance I could vote for him. But if it was today, I would write in Yang.
Matt, election today, what are you going to do?
I am in camp write-in Yang as well. I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. Oh, like a few months ago, if you had asked me, I would have said like I was going to be like, well, you know, I care about the economy. Trump's maybe better on the economy. I guess maybe I'll vote for Trump. But he's lost me in like the past 2 months completely. And I also live in Maryland, so my vote doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's going to go blue.
Alex?
Biden, pretty hardcore. But I mean, I like Hillary. I think you guys are crazy to not have Hillary as president. She would have been much more competent. So yeah, we can't do 4 more years of this.
Fred, what are you gonna do, man?
So I am in Arizona, so my vote is gonna matter. So we're gonna have to vote for Biden.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, my friend. I'm going to be voting from the great state of California by the time election comes around. And though California will, of course, go Democratic, I will still vote for Biden. And the reason is I want the popular vote to give as strong of a mandate as possible in the event that mail-in ballots are disputed or there's some crazy Supreme Court shit on November 4th. So I do think while even if you're not in a swing state, it's not as critical. You don't know what kind of funny business old Barr and Trump are going to work up if they don't like the results. And if it's close, that could be an issue. But that's my answer. Let's move on to the next question. Let's see here. We may have gotten through all the questions. All right. So with that, would you incentivize candidates to join a Unity ticket that would be seen as a traitor to their current party? How would you incentivize candidates to join a Unity ticket? Yeah. How do you make it so it's not this poison pill where they get banished?
You find someone who's either already banished or you find someone who's too big that they can't be banished. Mm-hmm. Like, so option 1 would be a Tulsi, option 2 is a Kanye.
Those archetypes I agree with. And then also, like, I think it's all about incentives. If enough people say this is a good idea, then it will manifest good, smart candidates. That's the way
it provides some cover.
Huh?
Yeah, I was going to say it provides some cover if it actually does get to a crazy point of support.
Yeah, it does.
Alex, you had some thoughts?
Tom said it the best with Tom, you said it the best. If you get the ground swell, you get the petitions, the person can come out and they can sort of reluctantly go, the people have spoken. Who am I to challenge democracy? Who am I to spit in the face of the citizenry? So,
all right, and I guess that's where we have that little bit of a chicken and egg thing, where we may not get the 10 million signatures if there's no name, but hopefully there's enough.
I think it's going to be difficult to say who am I unless somebody says, why not this person? You know what I mean? Because if you're saying, who am I to deny the public? Well, the public didn't call for you specifically, so why are you coming forward?
Well, this is where you do internal polling and stuff like that. So if you do some surveys and everyone overwhelmingly picks a candidate, you know, I mean, look, it's not hard to achieve consensus when your other options are Trump and Biden.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting argument, though, in that if you get like millions of signatures, and then, by the way, who picks who these names are? Because they don't ask you. Actually, here's the advice for Unity 2020. Ask people who they want to see when they give you your email, so that when you finally pick someone, you can say, oh, out of the 10 million, this was the number one. I don't want, the same reason I don't like some smoky room where the DNC is picking the nominee. I certainly am not equally comfortable with Bret Weinstein and some unnamed intellectual podcasters making that call either.
I think Mitt Romney and Holly Hill would be, like, if you're going to ask, like, who would be an establishment candidate, right, to left and right, those two would be good on the right side, you know, as far as center right. I don't know who would be willing to fall on the sword for center left other than Tulsi Gabbard.
Romney Gabbard. No.
All right, here's another question. Nell wants to know, would we be creating our opponent for 2024? What if they don't pick Yang?
Question.
What if we created a monster?
That's a really good question.
I mean,
I
would say that either way, whatever monster it creates would more people would like that monster than the two current monsters that a lot of people feel are the current nominees.
But maybe not a monster, a Yang killer.
Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to have a 2024 election cycle where you actually have two tickets that aren't insane. It could be lead to a good debate for the country.
And you're able to debate like real issues and have people respond to Yang's points with intelligent conversation, as opposed to like, oh, that's a great point, Buttigieg.
Well,
like, we need to up the discourse. Like, it's so ridiculous.
This is my only argument for if Trump wins in 2020, that I think it sets things up better for Yang in 2024, because you're going to have 20 people running on the Democrat side and 20 people running on the Republican side, and Yang is he's really, really going to stand out. So people on the independents, or people who are Republicans who like Yang, and Democrats are going to really gravitate toward him.
All right.
In the event of a Trump win.
I know we're way over what I told you guys would be a 30-minute conversation. So let me buzz through a few more questions, and then we'll take some final thoughts. All right. One of the last questions. Jon Stewart. Anybody have opinions on Jon Stewart?
Great
patriotic guy. I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Now, he does not qualify as center left, though, does he? He seems quite far left, no?
I think the term center left doesn't really matter. I think he would qualify for whatever the left position is in the Unity if it got to that. But
all right. I like him too. All right. So I think those are the key questions that I could find. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. Spending a couple hours on this stream already. Let me ask this final question, which is, maybe we just get Cody, Matt, then Alex, then Fred, and then I'll wrap up. Any final thoughts on this discussion? Advice for people listening? Just whatever you want to share, Cody.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Tom. Nice to chat with all you guys. All that I would say is that we think about the logistics of this, and yes, this is not 100% fleshed out. There are a lot of ways to nitpick, but in principle, I think most Yang fans would be disingenuous if they thought that in principle, this is not a good idea. And so all that we are asking is that you put your email address on that website and say, and maybe follow the Twitter account, tweet, hey, this is an interesting idea. That is literally all that people are asking you for you to do. And maybe if you're more passionate about it, you can talk more about it. But again, this is a long shot, but we need to be advancing into the public consciousness, the thought that something like this could happen within our politics, because our public consciousness is getting less and less robust. We are talking about more base issues, things that are not going to address core problems, and we need to kind of rise above that and say something new is possible. I think whoever gets elected in the current paradigm is going to be a lot of backlash on either sides, and this is a potential way to mitigate that, because I think it could get really ugly, and it's going to lead to a lot of already people in worse situations being in even worse situations, and that is something that I firmly oppose. So at least say that this is a decent idea in general, sign up, and that's all I have to say about it.
Thanks, Cody. Matt?
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me on, Tom. And I think I just want to close by saying, like, no matter where you fall on this idea, whether you think it's the worst thing ever or you're super behind it, it's just like I feel like the conversation, at least on Twitter in the past few weeks, has kind of gotten a little out of hand. Like people, I feel like, are more just trying to like attack each other rather than have an honest conversation. So I just think it's important to remember, like, even when you disagree with someone, like, just to try to understand where they're coming from and their point of view, and not try to assume why they feel the way they do. And it will just lead to a more productive conversation where both sides can hopefully come to some sort of conclusion, common ground.
Thanks, Matt. Alex?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tom. It's real nice to meet all you guys. Actually, I don't think I've ever met you guys before. Yeah, the only thing I would end with is, that's the most compelling argument for Trump's presidency to me was Republican catharsis. By finally giving them what they want, they could kind of chill out. But as we can see from the haircut riots and all that stuff, that hasn't happened. So conversation has just gotten worse over 4 years. Catharsis hasn't happened. So I think it's important to give this idea a bit more thought than you usually would, and just go sign up. And I agree with Cody. I agree with Matt. Let's attack ideas. Let's not attack people. And let's try to be the change we want to see in the world versus slandering people for personal gain.
Fred? Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for having me on again, Tom. I want to say I love this idea. Go to the website, put your information in. I would just ask the authors of the idea for more details in the future, like sooner rather than later. If we can get that accomplished, that would be very, very helpful. And I also think it would move the idea exponentially faster and create more of a groundswell. So those are my final thoughts.
Cool. So first, I want to thank Cody, Matt, Alex, and Fred for coming on. I think it was a super interesting conversation, and I think even though we didn't agree on a lot of things, we were able to still have a civil conversation and try and understand each other, kind of to Matt's point on maybe what isn't happening on Twitter as much these days. But hopefully, we kind of practice what we preached in the last couple of hours. And I think the second thing I would say is I would like everyone to consider 3 goals. None of them are mutually exclusive. One is let's get someone in the Oval Office that we feel will be the best for the country. It doesn't mean that we're voting for the best candidate we could think of, but please just try and vote for who you think would be the best for the country. The second thing is let's not forget about our down ballot candidates that are running for Congress. We get 1 or 2 in this time around, and then 2 years from now we get 5 or 6. That's how it starts. And sooner or later, we will break in, and that's going to be amazing. Third is, I would imagine, like, let's also keep our powder dry and get excited about Yang 2024. Exploratory committee would probably need to be announced around 2022 anyway. So there's a lot of potential there. And whether that candidacy happens within the Democratic primary or some new party, I'm fine with. And I do support the concept and the idea of Unity 2020. I'm very skeptical, and I'm concerned about the impact on the November election. But if it were Unity 2024, I would be behind it even further. And I agree with Fred's point that it would be great to get more details and transparency. But who would be opposed to more competition in the political system, for more voices, for more diversity? So I think the good news is we're all generally kind of, agreeing 80%. We may disagree on the timing and the names and the dates and that kind of thing, but we all want, better representation. And so I hope, if you are listening to this, that you will check out Unity 2020. Do your research, make the decision on your own. Please do your research on the other candidates running for the candidates that we know about running for office on Trump, and check out Joe Biden's website and his policies. I know it's not super exciting, but I think you might be surprised. There's some good stuff there. And then don't forget about Gang for Congress. You got David Kim, Blair Walsingham. There's a lot of really fantastic folks running who have been on many of these different shows and need all the help that they can get. And they will be on the ballot for sure. So think about that. And with that, I think we're going to say,
Tom, you
goodbye,
might
nerds.
Do a quick plug real quick.
Yeah, go for it, man.
I just wanted to say a Humanity Force endorsed candidate, Russ Cirencione, he's running against this guy who's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee or something like that. A powerful Democrat. He's super anti-UBI, anti-cash relief. Russ is, of course, pro-UBI. His election's July 7th. So if you wanted to do something today or tomorrow to help out, they're looking for phone bankers. So you could just head to his Twitter and I'll have a bunch of info on it at RussForUs2020. Yeah,
that's a good call out, Matt. And if anybody wants to go to Move Humanity Forward, the official Humanity Forward website, there's a section of endorsed candidates, of which Russ is one of them. So there's a lot of folks that need our help. And the good news is we can help them all. We can help all those candidates. We can support Unity 2020 if that's the direction we want to go. And you can support Biden as well. Let's not forget about that. He is on the ballot for those who are interested. But with that, I'm going to say I'll go first, and then we'll do Cody, Matt, Alex, Fred. Goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Come on.
Goodbye, nerds.
Goodbye, nerds.
Woo! All right. Broadcast